Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. We're super excited today because today we're talking to Todd Belveal. He's the founder and CEO of Washlava, a Tampa-based laundromat startup which uses all the newest and most modern technology and smartphones to run all the machines in a laundromat. It's really an innovation that's needed for quite some time. I am Cord Zoen. I am your host, and I'm also the CEO of Bake More Pies, a full-service advertising and marketing agency located here in the Tampa Bay region. On the Law of Relevancy, we talk about things that entrepreneurs and communications and marketers love to talk about, and we talk about what's happening today. Todd, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I love hearing about Washlava. You've got, it seems like when I look from a startup perspective, you're doing so many things the right way. You've got a great looking website, your social media presence is on point. And really, it seems like everything you're doing is disruptive to your industry. How did you get into this segment of disrupting the laundry world?
It's a good question. Um, I would like to say accidentally, but I guess it's not. I have a hard time understanding it sometimes myself because it's not my first startup; it's my second, and I never sought out to be a serial entrepreneur. But I guess you develop an eye for these things, and I had moved back to Tampa from Austin and was looking for things to invest in, and I typically I tend to look in places others don't for value. Um, Perhaps as gritty as they may be. So I bought a laundromat on the north side of Tampa. Paid $68,000 for it and overpaid probably by about $30,000
Oh my goodness.
for,
Wow.
for it. I think, but it's very difficult to know what to pay. But it wasn't so much money that it mattered, but it was in terrible condition. And at that time, my thesis was that I would simply try to roll them up. What I did notice about the laundry industry is coming from a retail and consumer products background and consulting a while ago now. Is that there's no national brand. While there are big national brands in detergents, and it's one of the biggest areas of household spend there is, and appliance brands, there's no laundromat brand. But there are 25,000 stores in the U.S. Alone, which makes it by far the biggest laundry. The chain called Coin Laundry
Yeah.
or Laundromat is the biggest retail chain in the country. It's bigger than McDonald's and Starbucks combined in terms of store count. So that's a lot of retail ground to cover. And the biggest single operator in it only has about 80 locations. So what I saw was what I thought was a consolidation opportunity. So I wanted to understand the business. I partnered with my sister as a senior vice president at Raymond James. We bought this laundromat and went about a project of remodeling it, refleeting it with new equipment, remodeling it, and then I operated it for about 18 months. This is beginning in 2014, 15. And the experience was dismal. I mean, it was turning keys, opening drawers, dumping quarters into a Home Depot bucket, weighing the Home Depot bucket on a scale, and taking it to the bank. um, I still laugh when I think about doing this because they were never happy to see me at Chase. Although I think I was a good customer. But nevertheless, it was a really, really difficult grind, keeping the machines running and then ultimately remodeling it. Things got easier after that, but then the change machine, which if it's not working, you're pretty much out of business in a coin operated business. It got robbed, like crowbarred out of the wall. And all these quarters were strewn across the parking lot, and the thieves didn't get very far because quarters, if you don't know, they're extremely heavy.
They can be heavy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, 80 to 100 pounds of quarters is what's inside those change machines, if not more. So it led me to go it led me to go look for technologies that I assumed would exist that
Yeah.
that's something like Park Mobile that we have in Tampa, and in a lot of major cities in the U.S. That something like that had to be, which is obviously displaced parking meters to a large degree in many major areas. I figured there had to be something like that. What I found was nothing. I
Yeah.
found yeah, a lot of bad software and hardware, really expensive software and hardware for businesses that generally gross on average $200,000 in revenue,
Well,
a year. So, I quickly realized, I called my sister and said, I think we have another, I think we have another startup, or we at least have to think about how we can, what it would take to automate this, because it wasn't all that dissimilar to what I'd done before.
I mean, here you are, you're someone who has already had a very successful career. You've been a consultant for the big firms in consulting. You've started a mobile centric rental car company, sold to Audi. I mean, here you are coming from a technology center like Austin, and then you're jumping into the laundromat business. I mean, personally, I think, and we'll talk about that in a minute, there's tons of opportunity, and it's probably a great vertical to want to go and disrupt. But it seems like even though you paid 68 grand and you partnered with your sister, um, a lot of times like, for example, I'll invest in ventures here at my business that I know I might not make money at, but I want to feel that pain directly. I want to understand. I want to get my hands dirty, because then I'm going to discover where the efficiencies are. Did you do the same thing with your laundromat experience? Was it really more about the education?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the mission initially on a business that I knew was inherently profitable. I didn't need to do a lot of work to understand that, it was a big business, lots of store locations, about 6-7 billion in size. I didn't need to do a lot of that to understand why I wanted to get into it. I just realized there's a need here to upgrade these facilities in a branded, cohesive way, at an acceptable retail standard, right? I'm not talking about luxurious, but durable, clean, like mass retail standard, Walmart or Target or something like that, Home Depot, and laundromats. As I looked around for one to acquire, I was just more and more shocked at the conditions that I found. So eventually I just settled on one that in a neighborhood I was familiar with, and reasonably easy to access from downtown Tampa, and at the right price. But yeah, I mean, so ultimately the desire there was, and it's still in my heart to make this upgrade, nationally, to create a network of these places. But yeah, you have to really, I mean, you begin to see all of the disconnects, and probably the biggest insight I had from it was, not only does the experience suck for people that go to them, it sucks to own them. I mean, it is a miserable experience. It's really time consuming for, I mean, my store was probably grossing 60,000 at the time. It does 5 times that now.
Really?
I think it was no fun to own. And I quickly, about a year in, I began to come to the conclusion, I think your question is leading towards, like, why the hell would you do something like that? And probably the same reason you do. It wasn't so much a research exercise, but it did answer the key question for me, which was, can you roll them up? Can you consolidate them even locally, like dry cleaners are? Can you have 8 to 10 stores in a market like Tampa, create a business that does 2 or 3 million in gross, and throws off a lot of operating cash flow? The answer is no. The answer is no, without some other factor. Not when they're coin operated. It's
Right.
simply not possible.
I mean, that's the definition of not efficient.
Yeah,
Literal coins. Like, who even carries coins anymore in their pockets?
less and less. I guess smartphone penetration was about 70%. Then it's much, it's higher now,
Mhm.
and probably where it's going to peak. I think, yeah, it was very, and I certainly don't. But 1 in 6 U.S. households rely on these facilities. I mean, which I'm like, this is just a massive gap. It's just something that has to be done. This is just, if you travel overseas and you look at laundrettes in Europe, or, they're typically attended, which, 70% out aren't attended here, but they're in good condition. At least they're generally clean. They're, much, much different than we experience here. So, I realized though that if you buy one, the incremental work there's no synergy, there's no time saving, right? There's no
Right.
efficiency angle to having 8 to 10. It simply means you have to have a staff. The stores don't gross enough to do that. Um, and the worst thing about it, and this is my final point on the lesson I learned about it, is that you are completely blind to your customer base. I mean, you can't market, and you can't talk to your customers. You don't even know how many you have. There's no way to know, right? Unless you just sat there and counted. Um, so yeah, it made me quickly realize it was in its current form, without some sort of paradigm shift. It was not a business I wanted to be in, moving forward.
But
Um, and that led me to explore the technologies, and then come to the conclusion there wasn't one, so that we had to build one.
yeah, and that you did.
Correct. Yeah.
Personally, obviously as a college student 20 years ago, or longer than 20 years ago now. Wow. I actually really liked going to the laundromat in my, that was connected to my dorm, because I could get all of my laundry done in like an hour and a half. I could even like stagger it so I could be done folding by the time it was highly efficient. And it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, successful or whatever, like you still got to do laundry. Even if someone's doing it for you, it still takes the same amount of time per load and things like that. So
Yeah.
um, I love the idea of what you're doing, and it seems like, especially from a socially conscious perspective, like if you can create this safer, cleaner, um, cooler experience at a laundromat, not only are you being successful and earning some money, but you're helping a population that needs this resource and giving them a better experience too.
Yeah, it's a really attractive market. It's that's the other thing. I learned these things later as we were exploring the technology and providing more research that would be attractive to investors. But it's not just low income people who are structurally poor, right? Or what we call, sort of in living in poverty or below, or earning below the minimum wage, or earning an unacceptable wage. It's young renters, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so college students are typically young renters after so it's a good place for us to start and build a relationship with young people,
I can
who
think of a
can
bunch
be.
of condos downtown that might really like to have a laundromat, because then they could turn that room into another closet.
That's right. No, I think the trends in multi-housing for sure are to get rid of in-unit appliances. They're very small. They're even, considerably smaller than a family would have at home. And if you're sharing, you have roommates, forget it. Yeah, it's a we piloted in apartments, and we put it off, the company put it off for the time being. But yeah, it's everywhere. It's the great equalizer. We all dirty clothes, and we all have to have the laundry done. And there's only a couple of ways of getting it done, right?
Yeah.
Do it yourself, pick a venue, or have someone pick it up and drop it off, which is too expensive for most, and too unreliable for most, really.
Well, let's talk.
So
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship in the startup world yourself. You mentioned that this being a startup a person, it wasn't always your plan. It was something you kind of fell into, and you seem to have a knack for it. You just mentioned how you brought data to a vertical that had never had data before, number of customers, being able, and some of the efficiencies and things like that. What are some other tips like that? Like, I assume you might tell budding entrepreneurs, if you have the ability to bring data to an industry or to a business, a particular sector of business, then there might be an opportunity for some kind of a startup or efficiency there. What are some other tips or advice you might give to people who want to be entrepreneurs? How do they, you mentioned you have a knack for picking out opportunities. What are some other things you would want to look for to help identify opportunities for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think probably the best way to summarize my point of view there is both of the ideas I had were born out of frustration. Really, when I was in consulting, I would challenge anyone at Hertz to have rented more cars than me. I was chairman circle, yet every time I was sometimes picking up C-level clients in a purple PT Cruiser. Um, that simply just wasn't acceptable to me. And I'm showing my ID 18 times before I can leave the parking lot. And improvements have been made since then. And I think, Silvercar had a role in some of that. I know it did in nationals, choose any car product, but I think, I think finding gaps, not just limiting it to technology, right? Because I'm really not a technologist. You know, at core, I can architect good systems for consumer use and make sure developers understand what the intent and the brief should be for that system. However, I think find gaps where consumers, where there's a large market, whether it be in terms of dollars or in terms of simply number of users or customers. Laundry is an example of that. Like rental cars, a very large market in terms of dollar size. Laundry, it's almost 4 times the size that the laundry business is, but the laundry business has a lot more customers, tens of millions more. So close to 40 million US consumers use laundry, shared laundry facilities wherever they may be. So for me, that was really, really exciting. And you sense, you see frustration in both. We're much more dangerous in laundry than we and Silvercar was. Silvercar had a very strong value proposition, so it was dangerous and it did grow fast. And
What do you mean by dangerous?
Meaning dangerous to the existing operators.
Gotcha.
I tend to look for two things: consumer frustration, right? So you can find consumer frustration in net promoter scores. Just go look for industries with low net promoters. Car rental had a net promoter of 11. Silvercar runs an 88.
What do we do about Congress?
Yeah, I don't think they would even be on the scale. Any political establishment at this stage.
Yeah.
But I think laundromats, they don't measure a net promoter.
No one's ever even had one.
It would be lower. It's how the industry is simply blind to anything besides demographics, which of course we can all get. So I think you find areas like that where there's something lacking that's not being addressed, and you also look for what I call imbalances, right? I mean, the car rental industry, and it's thematic to both of mine. I look for oligopolies. The car rental industry has 9 major brands. Silvercar is the 10th. 9 major brands owned by 3 companies. One that would just emerge from bankruptcy, right? So it's an oligopoly. It's supply side driven. Hertz and Avis are actually in the same town in New Jersey. That's their headquarters, Parsippany.
Yeah.
So it's the definition of oligopolies are the most vulnerable to sort of infestation or competition from startups.
So look for so oligopolies will tell you where there's opportunity.
Yeah, laundry is the same. Laundry is imbalanced toward the supply side. So you have a lot of independent mom and pop. Let's look at laundromats. Forgetting colleges, for example, it's an entirely different business. But if you look at laundromat owners, they typically own 1 to 2 stores, largely one. And you have a group of 4 or 5 manufacturers, predominantly in the United States, who make machines for the big machines that we see in laundromats. And they're all 3 of them are in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think one of them has a horse on it or something like that.
Yeah, Dexter.
Yeah.
So Wyatt has I think it's like a unicorn or something, but yeah. I don't know where these things come from.
I always fantasized about that, having one of those machines at my house, because I was like, man, I could do my laundry so fast with one of these machines, and I could do anything I have, from like a dog bed to a king size comforter or anything, because I find ourselves for me, the things that I might go to a laundromat for, the things that my machines at home can't handle, and I
Mhm.
need that more of a commercial option. But
People want big machines. There's no question. So I think you typically find where the supply side, the demand side
yep,
are balanced, right? Suppliers and car rental companies by having a net promoter of 11 have shown simply demonstrate they're consumer brands. They spend hundreds of millions on marketing a year. They have some very valuable brands, but they've shown that net promoter simply indicates they just don't care about their
right.
customers and their car selection. Simply it's car rental. The product is the car, not getting to the car.
That's right.
Right. And I used to always tell people that at Silver Car. The same thing is true in laundry. You have a bunch of manufacturers building machines using easy financing to push through just a distribution networks onto independents to build laundromats. And so they turn over at a very high rate. I think my laundromat in Tampa had 6 owners in 2 years before I bought
Wow.
it. So quickly, people quickly give up. So, you had to address it. So I think if you find macro situations where, you have few companies on the wrong side,
Yep.
and suppliers know nothing about serving consumers. They know nothing about marketing. They spend no time on it. If you can find that lack of concern for customers,
Low net promoter scores.
and then I think that's sort of where I tend to look, not simply someplace that has a need for technology.
And then
Without the
let's talk.
smartphone, I never would have done either startup.
Well, that was just going to ask you about the smartphone because it seems like, the obvious place, that's the number one device that we all have now, right? Like more business and more conversations, more communication gets done on your smartphone than any other device, even though I have a laptop sitting in front of me. But
Yeah.
it's the smartphone that's your mainstay. So why not build a business centric around a smartphone, right? And it seems like, obviously coming from Silvercar, you already had experience building an entire platform or form around smartphones, right? So not only are you looking for the oligopolies, low net promoter scores, um, businesses that are ripe for disruption in that way, but when you go to disrupt them, you're using, it seems like you're bringing tools to bear that you have experience with.
Yeah, that's right. I think in car rental, it was a disruption. I think in laundry, I call it more of an intervention. Uh, this industry, it's blindness to consumers. It's completely disconnected. But the phone itself, a story, just a personal story. I started writing Silvercar's business plan in 2005. I was so frustrated. It started off as a letter to the chairman of Hertz, indicating all the things I hated about their business model. Why do I have to show my ID a second time when I leave? Why am I putting gas in the car? I bill $4.50 an hour for Accenture. Why am I spending an extra hour putting gas in the car as I'm rushing to get home after on my Thursday night flight, traveling 40 weeks a year? Why am I doing that?
Well, so let's talk about that for a second. So as a CEO, as someone who's a chairman, receiving a letter like that, what advice do you have to give to entrepreneurs for looking for customer service inquiries like that, or suggestion box, things like that? Because do you think he knew at that moment that he was just about to create a competitor?
No, because I never sent the letter.
Oh.
The,
Okay, well that'll do it. Of course you didn't.
the reason I never sent the letter is that I found out they were a client of the firm's.
Well, yeah.
So I'm like, I'm still going to send the letter. And we used to get letters at Tiffany all the time. Like if you got a letter, if a letter was written about you to the chairman of the board of Tiffany and Company, you heard about it, about your store or your, aspects of the operation that you were responsible for. He answered all of them, and they got to you. And it didn't get to you with some sort of reprimand or anything like that. I just said, I just want you to see this letter. Let me know what we can do about it. I think nothing would have happened. The letter would have fallen on deaf ears if it even got there. They get so many complaints. If you're down at an 11 MPS, your complaint level's off the charts. I'm guessing.
Correct.
So uh, yeah, I would feel incredibly vulnerable
Well,
to a competitor.
well,
I'd feel incredibly vulnerable to new concept, to new concepts. Um, and yeah, it's just typical of these companies that they're too big, too comfortable, and they just don't adapt and they just don't listen. And I think in laundry's case, it's more structural, the problem that you have an industry where laundromats, just look at simple demographics. 70% of them are owned by white men over the age of 60. 70% of the customer base are under 40 and rent, and 65% of them are female. So these two groups don't understand one another, even without a mechanism for communicating with one another, engaging with one another.
well,
So yeah, I think I would be extremely unhappy to receive a letter like that.
yeah.
I've certainly been on the receiving end of complaints. We get a lot of complaints in the laundry rooms.
But
So
do you, what
because
advice?
we're dealing, and that's my final point on this, is that when I'm dealing in a business that nobody wants to be doing, I mean, nobody wants to be doing their laundry. I'm simply trying to make it a more positive experience because we all have to do it. And I think we've been successful in doing that, but it doesn't mean we don't feel plenty of complaints and a lot of questions about how to do laundry, particularly from college students. So
Well, I
that
think
never ends.
yeah. Well, thank you, Todd. I think you are. I mean, I think you have disrupted it. I think, when you look at the pictures of your laundromat or go visit the one that you've created with Washlava, I mean, it is a better. It's the iPhone store. It's the Apple store of laundromats, right? It's the cleaner, safer brand. There's a lot of technological reasons why it's safer. There are no coin machines for someone to break into and steal there at your laundromat, right?
Yeah,
Um,
actually the one in Tampa is actually the only cashless laundromat in the world.
wow.
There's no there isn't one anywhere else that like rideshare and taxi, you simply must have a phone. It's the greens, it's the entry fee for using it,
Well,
but it
let's talk.
unlocks just a lot of features. I mean, so if Silvercar, the smartphone came out in 2007, um, yeah, I quickly realized that building an entire company around that as the operating system, both for companies and for both for the users and for the operator, would make things a lot better.
Are there any devices out there right now that are similar to a smartphone that are disrupting things like smart watches, cryptocurrency, anything that you've got your eye on?
Certainly watches. I think watches make payments a lot easier. As I observe sort of tap and pay in retail environments, and um, I don't wear an Apple Watch. I just get enough screen time,
Yeah.
anyway. My girlfriend does though, and she's really adept at using Apple Pay with the watch, and it is extremely easy. Even I'm shocked at how easy it can be. So it's made us think, about that, and how it interacts with the hardware, that we put into the machines. Because right now you would essentially be. We had Bluetooth in the laundry machines at one point. We've abandoned it because Bluetooth just isn't effective in that kind of
Right.
environment.
There's all
But you
kinds of
need you
issues.
need an NFC sort of capability, which we will eventually have, because I do think it'll be on the wrist. I think this is she doesn't even whip out her phone anymore, even though it's in her other hand. She's still using
Well,
the watch for tap to pay.
I think that's one other thing that we could add to our list of tips is the convenience piece. I mean, if you look at the entire, like there's example after example of where, like, for example, Chrome browser was like half a second faster than Firefox and Internet Explorer, and the whole world shifted over to Chrome because our brains are wired that way. If something's easier, faster, like even the difference between using a watch and a cell phone, the watch is faster, so you're going to use the watch, and she'll never go back to using the phone because it's just more convenient. It's why we text one another. I don't want to have a long conversation with you. I would rather text you, hey, are you coming to dinner tonight? Like
Yeah.
whatever that is. It's just human nature. It's why the whole world's moving to texting and convenience. Um, One of the things that you mentioned, and we'll circle back around to some of the emerging technologies that you've got your eye on. But one of the acronyms we brought up multiple times is NPS. NPS stands for just for those of you listening or watching that don't know what that is, it comes from some researchers who wrote a book called The Ultimate Question. It stands for Net Promoter Score. It's about 25 years old. Is that correct? 25, 30 years old now.
Roughly.
And what it is, it's the most simple survey tool, most powerful and simple tool that you can possibly use in your business. And basically, you're asking one question to your customers at the end of their experience, and is, would you recommend on a scale of 0 to 10 our business to someone else, or 1 to 10? And basically, 9s and 10s are your promoters. 5 and below are your detractors, people who are not going to wreck your business or had a terrible experience. And everyone in between doesn't, they just kind of don't register, right?
Mhm.
But then you give, then you ask one simple follow-up question, and it is, why did you give us that answer? And it's a very, very powerful tool. And I'm sure that you guys used it quite a lot in your consultancy. We use it quite a lot here at our business at Bake More Pies. It's a very, very powerful thing to understand your recurring business with your existing customer base and your ability to tap that and use your existing customer base for new customers. We love NPS. We love Net Promoter Score. Companies that historically have had the highest are companies like Southwest Airlines. If you find yourself wanting to book with Southwest Airlines, it's because they've made it a better experience, and they actually measure it using NPS.
I am a proud companion pass holder.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, I love hearing the fact that you're using some of those tools to give you some measurements across industries.
It's actually it's the only one
Yeah.
we use for marketing effectiveness. We don't use any other measures to measure return on sort of marketing investment.
It's
either that,
powerful.
it's a really good score of execution around you're either doing it right or you're not. And the good thing about mobile apps, you can ask it, every time, or you can ask it every 2 or 3 uses, would you, and keep getting a good accurate. And then, the laundry, even with the laundry, the images you've seen, and we have some really advanced designs coming out in terms of the environments that surround our networked machines. The environments are important, but it runs a net promoter of 81.
That's phenomenal. That's very, very good.
I mean, it just shows you how low the bar is. I mean, really, because, Apple runs a 70, but Apple's everywhere, of course, right? I mean, so they have a lot of detractors, relative, I think Tesla's the highest at 89, last I checked. So there's so many raving fans, but yeah, I agree with you, your perspective. I think there's not much time as a CEO when you don't have a whole lot of time to look at much else. You talk to your chief, whoever's running marketing for you, and you simply say, this net promoter is too low.
Yeah.
Why are we dropping?
And it's also if you're an entrepreneur and you're involved in a startup and you're looking to sell your business one day in the future, it is one of the things that private equity firms actually look at now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at, because it helps them understand what your true value and your multiple is in your business. It's an extremely powerful tool. I highly recommend reading the book, The Ultimate Question, and they also have a second edition out now. Obviously, I know all this because I'm a fan. But anyhow, I highly recommend it. Todd, one final question. Really appreciate your time today. You have bigger plans. You have other things that you're moving on to. Can you tell us a little bit about your future and where you're taking your career?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. I'm just a little bit over 50, and so I've been reflecting on that a lot lately. But I think in the immediate term, I'm going to continue to support Washlava, but in an independent role, as brand ambassador and evangelist and all those things. So, because I'll certainly be doing all I can to
Your shirt looks very clean, by the way.
Thank you. To help build the brand, but more importantly, I think we talked about net promoter. That's the only reason we're in the college and university business. We did a beta test and we ended up with a net promoter of 98 coming out of this University of Florida test that we did. So from the users, and the school was just blown away by it. And my board of directors just simply refused to let me. They're like, we're doing this first. So we partnered with LG, and you can read all about that. But we've talked a lot about laundromats. But our main business is colleges right now. I think the laundromats piece, it's independent, it's brick and mortar. It's what I know from my previous days, before automotive IoT and before appliance IoT and apps. And my goal, my ambition, my dream, really career wise, is to kind of leave a brand behind,
Yeah.
a national brand, if not global. Um, I believe Washlava can do that, and I believe, not just the digital brand that you see present in a college environment, which it's predominantly a digital brand. We don't have signage everywhere with our name all over it, and we have a little bit, but a terrestrial one as well. And I think I'm a retailer. I'm a merchant by heart. In my core, the technology has helped me do that, and I was better at building the technology than I thought. I think better at finding the right people, honestly, to build the technology than I thought, and certainly had a lot of great backers along the way. So yeah, I continue to work with those people and be a backer of other people who I think have the same potential in areas that I know. um, and get more involved in Tampa. I think I tend to be very silent when I'm working on a project, and I went from one sequentially. People are like, "Why'd you leave this job after 7 years?" Well, I left Silvercar after 7 years as the founder. I think it's just a number in my mind. Maybe it's a 7 year. I was just, and I did not expect to do them sequentially, right? So really, it was 15 years of founding startups, and all the things, as you know, and the people that listen to your podcast, I'm sure, know what goes into that, right? The emotional and physical toll it can sometimes take. So yeah, my plans are, I'm open minded to a degree. I'd say, I'm 50% committed to figuring out the plans and deploying 2 to 3 more stores in Tampa, figuring out those unit economics, and launch, getting Washlava's store model off the launch pad,
That's cool.
in collaboration with the company, of course,
And
and the new management, right? Nothing happens without them. I think outside of that, getting involved, more, since I moved back to Tampa, which is my hometown. I think I've just been not doing too much since I've been so busy with the startup. I
yeah,
think looking forward to getting to know some more people, getting around town, seeing what's going on, and not just the startup community, but elsewhere, and seeing what I can get involved with, and how I can sort of help other people do, if they have similar ambitions, help them achieve them.
yeah. Well, Todd, I'd be happy to introduce you to a few of my friends and folks I know
That'd be
around
great.
town. Thank you. So how do the listeners? How does everybody watch this? How do they follow you and learn about what you're up to next? Do you have social media
Oh, I do.
profiles?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really all over LinkedIn lately.
Okay.
It's not all my own doings. So, but there's, you can follow us, on my LinkedIn page. It's probably the best page, but Instagram, Facebook as well. But mainly on LinkedIn. If it's professional, I usually keep it there.
Perfect.
So that's probably the best place to find me if you want to reach me.
Well, in your defense, LinkedIn has gotten better lately. I actually like it a lot better than it used
I
to.
I've always, yeah, I really always liked it, but I've always been one of those very open. Just, I'll accept any invitation.
Yep.
I have to admit, I do go down and sort of say, do I really know this person? Once a year, I kind of go down there and say, because I recognize people are selling on it, and I don't mind that at all. I'd
Yeah,
rather get that than an email or a call, frankly.
that's true.
And I've met some really interesting people,
Yeah.
that way. And yeah, it really has improved, for sure. It's less of a smartphone tool. I tend to get, I don't know, let's just say, in trouble on Facebook and
Okay.
Instagram. I don't, if I'm carrying my smartphone around, I really don't want it to be everywhere with me. My location services are off, so you're not going to find me that way. So yeah, feel free to reach out anytime on LinkedIn
Well, we'll
messaging.
connect with you on LinkedIn, and I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this will do so also. We're going to be following you closely. And If you want to follow this show, the Law of Relevancy podcast, you can find it anywhere where podcasts are found and all across the Bake More Pies and Law of Relevancy social channels. Todd, thank you again for joining us today. Very exciting to hear about how you're disrupting verticals, and we'll be watching closely as you move on to the future.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you too. Hope to see you around.